It is episode 2 of season 3 of Strange New Worlds, and are you enjoying it so far? I hope so. I hope that you checked out our ups and downs for episode 1, which dropped yesterday because of course we had a 2-episode premiere. We also have our reaction videos where myself, Ellie and Tom go through, full spoilers, although obviously if you're watching this, I presume you've watched the episode, but we have our reaction videos which drop quite earlier on as well, so I hope you'll check them out too. Folks, thank you so much everyone who's liking, sharing and subscribing. It makes such a difference. It really, really does. The comments have been wonderful, and the people who are disagreeing with downs and reviews, that I'm enjoying the fact that we're all talking about new Star Trek again. It's honestly so much fun. I have a feeling this episode is going to get a little bit of discussion around it, because there's a lot in it. Folks, will you join me as I go through all of the ups and downs for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 Episode 2, Wedding Bell Blues. My first up of the week goes to Spock's log, but specifically, that's a great command of the English language there, Sean, choosing between the same shirt. He's talking about how they've come back from 3 months of retrofitting and basically fixing the Enterprise up again after their battles with the Gorn. Crucially as well, that also tells us that time has gone by, and 3 months is also the length of Nurse Chapel's fellowship with Dr. Corby. So Spock is a little bit excited. You know, you can see it's written all over his face. And also, I guess, a little bit anxious, and certainly he is really anticipating her return to the Enterprise. The when of it all is set around the centennial of the Federation. This episode is set in 2261, which is, centennial, clues in the name, 100 years on from that briefly glimpsed scene in the end of Star Trek Enterprise in that famous last episode, These Are the Voyages, which saw then Captain, who would go on to be Admiral Archer, anyway, saw Archer about to deliver his historic address to the Federation. Oh man, just give us that as a movie, would you?
Hi, I'm Duncan Relic, no relation, and I sell relics from before the burn. I'm here to talk to you about Incogni. I spend a lot of time on Federation forums trying to sell my relics by relic. That can leave me open to bad breen actors out there. I like to keep my data safer than Picard did, and there are so many data brokers out there. I was slamming my head on the console. Then I found out about Incogni. Go to the link in the description to sign up today. Incogni reaches out to these data brokers on my behalf. The process is automated, and they already have over 230 brokers on their system. And their new feature allows me to request specific additional brokers to be contacted as well. Ever got a call from someone who reminded you of Zora? I have. They could be a scammer trying to prey on you using AI. Control Schmuntrol. My health insurer got in touch with me and tried to raise my premium. Data brokers had told them I was selling relics from the burn. No, my friends. Before the burn. Incogni helped me prevent repeats of this and help me feel secure with my data online. And they can help you too. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code TrekCulture at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. Incogni.com/TrekCulture. That's http://incogni.com/TrekCulture. You know me, I only put my name on the good stuff. Incogni is relic approved. And if it ain't relic, it ain't a relic. No relation.
Jumping forward 100 years, massive celebrations are going to be underway for the centennial of the Federation. And everything's going to go off without any kind of hitch. Hitch. What a choice of words. I want to give an up as well to Spock and La'an practicing their dancing in this. Right, it's an important scene for a couple of reasons, but I want to focus on La'an first. So much of her story for the first 2 seasons of Strange New Worlds has been quite heavy, quite dark, and even those moments of lightness. For example, a lot of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, where you had La'an and an alternate James Kirk, and it looked to be lightening a little bit, then ends in tragedy. So, quite frankly, she's had a rough go of it. Her victory against the Gorn in episode 1 goes an awful lot of a way to helping her come to terms with her own personal history with the Gorn. And I'm really excited to see this direction. We know Christina Chong can play dark, and we know that she can play the serious dramatic side of things, but we've been teased with her comedy chops. Think of the Elysian Kingdom, for example, and think of when she and Number One were playing Enterprise Bingo. And now here she is dancing. I'm really enjoying, by the way, La'an's journey through the performing arts. You know, we had her singing in Subspace Rhapsody, and we have her dancing now in Wedding Bell Blues. She is teaching Spock how to dance, and he is responding in the typical Spock way. It's quite mechanical, it's quite mathematical. You know, he might hit all of his beats, but she's trying to impress upon him fluidity of movement. Does that sound like I know what I'm talking about? Cool. But then to look at Spock's side of this, I like the relationship between himself and La'an. And I am going to come back to that word, particularly as we go on in this review. But right here, he comments, "This suits you." And I agree. I would go so far as to say it suits them, their friendship. Spock has been stoic in his own way. La'an has been stoic in her own way. You could imagine these two characters gravitating together. This sort of inverts what we might expect to see. More of this, please. There is a great little joke, and I think a nod to earlier Star Trek, when La'an says, basically makes a quip about, you know, losing your heart, and Spock says, absence of the heart would be quite fatal. It's his version of a joke. It's very funny, but I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, Vulcans can live without major organs, can't they? Taken up. I have to give a resounding and joyful up to Cillian O'Sullivan, a fine Irishman, playing Dr. Roger Corby in this episode. Yes, Corby is introduced in person here, played by a good lad from Ireland now, I have to say. He is brilliant. We've only seen Corby once before in Star Trek, and it was 60 years ago. We know a bit more about him, but it's wide open for how he is to be portrayed. This episode, doing the comedy work that it does, it gives particularly O'Sullivan a chance to really show us what he can do with comedic timing, but also shows what you can do with this character. We know how he ends, which maybe I won't discuss in this video in case you haven't had a chance to watch that episode of the original series. I'm actually being serious when I say I know not everybody has watched the original series. So yes, Corby was introduced back then in the episode What Little Girls Are Made Of. I'll say no more, watch the episode. But yes, Corby here, a lot of fun and a real bright spark in the episode. And fantastic as well, Cillian and Jess Bush, who is, I mean, it's kind of a blink and you'll miss it fellowship. 3 months have gone by. Chapel is back aboard the Enterprise, and I have a down. I don't hate the story that we get in this episode by any means whatsoever. I'm just lovesick Spock. I feel we've done this. It was touched on, of course, last episode, when Chapel says, don't do something romantic like wait for me, I'm still going on my fellowship. You know, space might be good for us as people, not us as a couple. The joke of this episode hangs on Spock not really accepting that. I feel it's been done. That's my issue. Do I dislike all of the humor around it in this episode? Absolutely not. This is such a funny episode. I would like this to be more or less standalone in terms of Spock pining. Theirs is not the only storyline on show here. We have Ortegas, and we finally meet Ortegas' brother Beto, and Uhura all in that great scene in, I suppose, the sparring room, the gym? the sparring gym? Anyway, they were in there and just up to the haymaker. I'm sorry, Beto had it coming. He baited her. Yeah, I deserve a baiting for that. It's fun because you know us. We are hashtag Team Ortegas. You know, if that means 2 Ortegae, I'm on board with this. It's so much... It's not fun to see her punch her brother, but seeing this really comfortable, sort of open, relaxed interaction between the 3 of them. Now, of course, we know there's an undercurrent, well, there's several undercurrents here. One of which we will come back to later on, and one which is evident pretty much straight away, which is that Uhura and Beto have a spark together. And it's just nice to see. And we get that banter about it in the corridor. You know, Erica's just like, what is this? What is this? No, 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 no. To which they both go like, you know, we're grown-ups at the end of the day. And I really like the interplay between these 3 characters. Also, in the first episode, I downed the really obvious coverall wig that Celia Rose Gooding had to wear because obviously a couple of years have gone by, she's grown out her hair. Here, we can see the result of growing out her hair. Take it up! I think it looks fantastic. A small scene that I'm really glad they included in this episode is the scene in Pike's quarters between himself and Batel. She is very much still on the mend, even after all these months of her ordeal with the Gorn. And it's just 2 people at home. This is a great episode for sort of stripping away the Starfleet of it all and just seeing people as people. You know, we haven't seen this version of Marie before. Already, I'm just like, yep, I want to see more of this every episode. Gimme, gimme, gimme. We know where Pike is going, and Pike alludes to the fact we know where Pike is going. But that doesn't mean he can't enjoy himself and have fun along the way. And I would say, you know, the same is true of Marie. We know she's not out of the woods when it comes to Gorn infection. So whatever that ends up meaning down the line, I like to see this enjoyment. I like to see living in the meantime. And this is a scene all about that. And of course I'm going to give an up to the fact that he has so many hair products she wouldn't know where to store them on her own ship. You obviously pay attention to social media, Paramount and CBS. Spock is not in the best of moods because the woman he's been waiting for didn't wait for him. And, you know, that's something he's gonna have to learn how to live with, potentially. We do get the first tease. Reese Darby in the window. That's an up. We know from the trailer, of course, Reese Darby is in this season. It's this episode. This is the Reese Darby episode. Well, I say episode. There might be more, but for now, he's definitely in this one. I love that tease in the window. It's a bit like, what's to come? It also, in a way, parallels another window appearance, but I'll get to that in a bit. Chapel and Corby are in the portside galley? I'm going to say portside galley. I might be wrong. But they're in the portside galley and they're hosting their friends. They're telling people how they met. She's introducing Corby to everyone. And we see the new ensign, the nurse as well, being played by Chris Myers, who has no ensign, well, you know, he is an ensign, but he has no name in this. I want more of him because he's clearly being set up as a supporting character this season. I love his banter with Una in sickbay as well. I like that they're still continuing the Illyrian storyline. I do want to see where it goes. But he's obviously important enough to be in the portside galley, so can we get a name next week? That would be awesome. But they're all there, and what we get is, it was my first proper laugh out loud moment of the episode, which is taken up Sam Kirk fanboying over Corby. Love it. Absolutely love it. And Corby sort of rolling with that. I don't get a sense of ego out of him. There's a couple of moments throughout the episode where it sort of touches on, well, maybe he is quite, you know, confident. But I get more confidence than arrogance from him. So they tell the story of how they ended up together just as Spock walks in. And I want to give an up taking the time to show Corby being the one very conscious of Spock's arrival. There's no jealousy, nothing like that. He's a bit like, oh, Spock's here, because he's conscious that he doesn't want to rub it in Spock's face. I liked that. Again, it helps me to like this character, because I suppose the very fact that he is a new love interest for Christine might set us up to not be such a fan of this character. And it's little beats like this that really help me to go, I kind of like this guy. I mean, obviously I like him anyway, he's Irish, but still. Saying that, they proceed to tell the single most romantic story ever. It's not quite as bad as when Christine sang in front of the entire galley about how she was ready to move on from Spock in a heartbeat. Which, by the way, no blame over her. We discussed this when we did Subspace Rhapsody. It's not quite as rough as that, but it's a bit like, I don't love the Lovesick Spock storyline, but also, yeah, that poor Vulcan. He leaves the scene, he walks over and gets a drink, where he is approached by a young Vulcan bartender. My first up, before I get into anything, Reese Darby is not seen as Reese Darby by any of the characters in this episode. Well played, continuity. Well played. Anyway, Reese flippin' Darby's brilliant. Brilliant. He is having an absolute ball in this episode. He is absolutely styled. I mean, let's just say it. He is styled to look like William Campbell's Trelane from the episode The Squire of Gothos from the original series. And there are things that happen later in the episode which only ties everything together even more. He is having so much fun that I'm having fun watching him have fun. And that's before we even get into the storyline of everything. Look, in a way, is he hamming it up? Yeah, sure. But this character lends itself to ham. I mean, it's a whole pig. That's what you do with this kind of character. We get finger clicking. We get the fun of the wedding preparation. We get, you know, the quick, oh, we need a wish first to set everything in motion. I had the most fun watching this episode that I've had in such a long time in Star Trek, honestly now. More than Subspace Rhapsody, maybe more than Subspace Rhapsody. Maybe not as much as those old scientists, but I mean, come on now, come on. Everything about it worked for me. Reese Darby's character, who does remain unnamed for the whole episode, we can infer some things. The scene cuts to black and we hear, and Spock then wakes up in his bed the next morning where he greets his fiancée, Christine Chapel. There is a very lovely and romantic scene where they kiss each other and she reveals that she's wearing the wedding ring. Also, I just want to say props. I love that they kept Jess Bush's finger tattoos. Such a small thing. We've seen them in Star Trek before, but we get obviously the big close-up shot of it, and I like realism. We sort of start the day again. You know, we get Spock's log again. He recounts the fact that it's been 3 months since the ordeal with the Gorn, and we get things same but different. We are at Starbase 1 again, as we were at the start of the episode, which, by the way, up to the use of Starbase 1 here, because we really spend some time in those terrarium pods. Which I love that as a word, because the word is said in this episode, and it's also going to be a thing if you've read the episode titles for season 3. And you have all of the starships dotted around, which of course I will go into in the cetacean observations as well. By the way, if you want one of these, the link's at the bottom of this video. Visit the store, you can grab one of these, you can grab TrekCulture t-shirts, you can grab Ups and Downs t-shirts. And you know what, this is not just a plug. I really like this. I hope you will too. Grab one below. Just, yeah, while I think of it. We get the scene with Spock and La'an again. A little bit different because now La'an is teaching Spock the moves for his first dance at the wedding, which is happening tomorrow. You know, the wedding that we've been preparing for forever. What's that? Oh, we're all as confused as you are. Right, so. Okay, cool. So obviously that off-screen finger snap has changed some things. Do you remember when Christine and Corby were a couple? Because only one person remembers that. But we don't know who just yet. What we do get then is the reflection in a pad of an Andorian wedding planner. Continuity. However, did you read that, Pat? Whatever else you want to say about what Reese Darby does in this episode, he's planning the heck out of that wedding. At the rehearsal for the wedding, of course, Pike is Spock's best man. We then get the reveal that Corby is Chapel's best man. He later refers to himself as a maid of honor, but best man, maid of honor, do whatever the heck you want. It's the 23rd century. We get this wedding cake or little samples of. There's something not quite right with it. Spock takes a bite. It's, they're trying to fuse a human ceremony with a Vulcan ceremony, like Hugh-Can or Volman, which I am using going forward, taken up. It's a bit spicy, so the wedding planner just does a little click of the fingers and we try again. And Corby looks a bit put out by this, because this new version of the cake is beautiful. And then there's the reveal that Christine's mother's wedding bouquet was preserved and it's been shipped, and she reveals that, oh no, it wasn't shipped at the right temperature. Which, by the way, it's inferred that Corby had something to do with those flowers dying. And I know things are stressful, and I know things are confusing. That was a dick move, mate. Thankfully, the wedding planner is able to save them with another click of his fingers. Not only a click of his fingers, but as he leans forward, lifts his leg right up as well. Time of his life, taken up. Corby, you see, is not quite as happy as everybody else. He is watching this talk of wedding dancing down the aisle, and Benga doesn't seem to be very on board with that, and he feels he needs to do something. So away he goes to break into Spock's quarters. Now, little does he know Spock is watching him from afar, but he does manage to get through the door. Spock walks in and confronts him, and he comes clean. He was trying to delete Spock's vows. Why is that? Well, because he and Christine are together. What do you mean together? Romantically. I'm biased as heck, Irishism. Almost everything Irish is getting an up in this episode. Almost. But he's so good. And, this exchange where he reveals that, one of the ways that he, himself and Christine developed feelings for each other was he quoted some poetry by the Chilean poet Pablo Neruda. Sonnet number 11, in case you wanted to check, because I did, and it's beautiful. This results in Spock punching him. I've spoken before, by the way, spoiler, it works for me because it's a comedy, right? But I've spoken before about the frequent displays of emotion for Spock. Here, you see, it works because this is a farce. This is a comedy. In the overall narrative of Star Trek, do I feel there's a bit too much emotion? Yes, maybe there is sometimes too much displays of emotion. Part of the appeal of Leonard Nimoy's Spock was the control of said emotions. This is, I think, a clever use of it. This isn't a normal situation. He is not in control, and very much not in control, as we see as the episode goes along. So punching Roger kind of makes sense. I love that. So Roger wakes up in the bed, and Spock is just lying beside him, just waiting for him to wake up again, and straight away apologizes, because that feeling of anger broke the spell. Spock is now aware something has changed. It's kind of a good little moment there as well, but I love that of all of the things that they could do with their time, they have an intellect off, as in who's got a bigger intellect. Taken up, because first of all, we all know what you're really measuring, and second of all, Spock's confidence. If this were a competition of intellect, I would not be the one to lose. I'm paraphrasing, but my goodness. I really like them together, and I think they like them together. I think they like each other despite the fact that, yes, they both have feelings for the same person. And Corby is quite understandably upset with what's happening. He arrived and the two of them were deeply in love. And suddenly, in the blink of an eye, she's marrying somebody else. And he seems to be the only one aware of the change. So they feel the need to see if they can find out what's going on. They surmise that strong displays of emotion seem to break this spell. So maybe what they'll do is go and try and get somebody else angry, which leads to the scene in the science lab with Sam Kirk. No one likes your mustache. Oh, be nice to Sam. But I howled. And then he just assumes he's got cold feet. And, you know, Spock is like, please punch me. He's like, I can't give you a black eye the night before your wedding. I like that he doesn't say he's not upset or anything. Like, Spock really went below the belt with the mustache there, or at least below the nose. And they get called away, which is probably for the best. There's a running gag where the wedding planner refuses to treat Roger with any respect. Obviously, we find out why. But, you know, when the planner arrives in Spock's quarters, before they confront Sam Kirk, he says, you're everywhere, like a rash. Oh, Mr. Corby. And as they're leaving, he goes, it's Doctor, and goes out again. Oh. Their quest to free people from the effects going on around them leads them to Pike's quarters, where it looks like Pike knows too. No, it's Spock's bachelor party. It's not a big one, but Spock is Spock. I get that it would be an intimate affair. So it's Sam and Benga, and I like it. Scotty's already ingratiated himself, like they know. But he's not much of a drinker though. Go on, taken up. Spock then rather quickly has to get out of here as well. Sam just goes, what did I tell you? Cold feet. My feet are perfectly warm. Thank you. Oh. They finally twig it. Corby and Spock check against the guest list, against the crew complement, realize there's one extra person on board, they're in the portside galley, and they find the wedding planner. It all starts to come out, well, in dribs and drabs, it starts to come out a little bit. And the wedding planner shows his power. He causes the Enterprise to go to red alert and shake and everything if they don't play along. And with the snap of his fingers, Spock wakes up in bed. Wakey, wakey, Mr. Spock. Up. Just having a ball. Puts him into his little glass when he says that he's not going to play along, and, just as a nice, so do you see that? You can't really do anything. I'm in control here. Oh, it's silly, it's brilliant. And also, it's one thing that omnipotent characters benefit from advancements in technology. You can kind of play with this thing and make it look good, because it looks pretty good, I have to say. The wedding day is upon us. The guests are gathered in Starbase 1, and it looks like it's a good time for most. Corby, who's wearing, I quite like his floral crown. I'm just gonna say that. He's there as the maid of honor, as he calls himself. The wedding planner is now the celebrant. Spock has to stand and wait for his bride-to-be to appear. They assume that maybe playing along is the best thing to do here. It's just a hoot. Christine arrives looking absolutely stunning. She walks up the aisle. I guess they're not doing that waltz with Mbenga then to send her up to the aisle. Actually, there's a really quick shot here. So nobody walks her down the aisle. There's no, giving away in the strictest sense. But there's a blink and you'll miss it shot of she gives her bouquet to Dr. Mbenga when she gets up to Spock. Maybe it's sort of a mentor-mentee thing. We know that, her parents are obviously not there. Her mother has passed away. I just like the suggestion of him giving her away. It's not too, we know that they have such a deep relationship, episodes like Under the Cloak of War, even The Broken Circle. It's such a blink and you'll miss it thing. I choose to interpret that as sort of him giving her away. Although I hope I've explained that well. I thought it was a nice shot. They are about to exchange vows, and Corby stands because he cannot have this anymore. Immediate up. There's a doggo in this episode. There's a doggo. Did you all see the doggo? I saw the doggo. It's an up. Straight away. There's no question. And even the way Sam and the doggo look at each other. Oh, my heart. Anyway, Spock decides to deliver the most romantic vows in the universe, which initially I kind of took as, oh man, twist the knife there and poor old Corby. But no, they thought that if strong emotions like anger were able to break the spell, something even stronger again, like love, might do so too. And it succeeds. Christine sort of comes out of her reverie and she realizes that none of this is right. You know, as wonderful as Spock is and as wonderful as she is, they're not meant to be together. And Reese Darby's character is not happy at all. And he's like, right, that's it. Cavalcade of death for everyone. You die, you die. You and the crown. What were you thinking about trying to upstage the bride? Absolute up, by the way. Don't do that. Why would you wear a crown to somebody's wedding? He's then stopped. John Delancey cameos as, not in body, but in voice, as a green cloud version of, well, I mean, he's Q, isn't he? So many things going on at the one time. We surmised, and it was fairly there, from the trailer, that with the style of dress, that we were definitely doing a version of Trelane from the Squire of Gothos in this episode. Trelane has, for donkey's years, been cited as the inspiration for Q in The Next Generation. John Delancey himself said he took inspiration from William Campbell's performance. Here, they managed to have their cake and eat it without expressly confirming anything as well. It goes even farther. Q, as we can absolutely infer him to be, arrives to stop his son. Yes, that's right. Reese Darby is playing Q Jr. Q Jr. introduced in The Q and the Grey, the very end, in the episode of Star Trek Voyager, and then of course brought to life by Keegan Delancey, John Delancey's son in real life, in Q2, in Star Trek Voyager again. Here we find out that this version, as played by Reese Darby, is 8,020 Earth years old. So he's a child. He's still a child. And he plays it up, you know, Dad, you know, there's not fair. Oh my God. Just the pure laughter. And he's playing with his toys. That's what he's doing. He's playing with his action figures and smashing them together and doing the things that we all did with action figures. I would say when we were kids, as if I didn't do that earlier this week. And, you know, he's a bold kid. That's all it is. And it's absolutely flipping brilliant. So in this one story, they've managed to bring together the Squire of Gothos, every flipping Q episode in The Next Generation, and in Voyager. Yes, Q was also in DS9. Latin them up, but it's not even hard. And I don't want to just say that I'm Latin them upping the fact that John Delancey is in this episode. It's how they handle the stories, the characters, all of it. It is done so well. Q says, wrap it up and give them back their freedom. Come on now, stop being so silly. And word for word. And away they fly, and suddenly everybody is free. Pike gets up to make a very awkward speech about, I guess happy Centennial Day. And they go to the bar. Who's working the bar? An Idosian, our first live action Idosian. In fact, Otoy, who we've talked about on the channel a few times, they did a render of what Arix from the animated series would look like in a sort of live action portrayal. But I guess technically, officially, this is our first Idosian. The end credits list her as Kelsing, so that's what I'm gonna go with. Kelsing is there, she is making cocktails, she is mixing drinks, she's getting lines, which, you know, that, and then with Pike and Una talking to her at the bar, I'm sort of inferring that maybe we're going to see her again. She's great. I love the introduction of the character. However, after Mbenga and Scotty are there, so, you know, perhaps we might get that drink. And she says, well, that drink would burn your esophagus and everything below it. And Scotty says, I'll have 2 Guinness instead. Happy days. Guinness in Star Trek. And then she places them on the counter. Down. Trellium down. That is not how a Guinness should ever look. The head to black ratio on that is woeful, and that would be sent back if you were in an Irish bar. I will not apologize for that. They looked terrible. I literally was sitting there and I went, oh my God, instant trellium. What are you doing? So yeah, look, they were bad and everyone should be aware of that. Thankfully, we leave that awful apparition of drinks as we go back throughout the party. We see people obviously getting on very, very well. Uhura and Beto definitely smiling, clinking drinks, and presumably dropping breadcrumbs for the rest of the season. We have Pike dancing with Batel. We have Spock dancing with La'an. And we get a sort of an extension of their earlier discussion. Now, I feel they're setting up something here. I'm going to give a cautious up to Spock and La'an here because I get genuine friendship vibes. I'm cautious because of my first down. I don't think he's about to be lovesick for La'an, but I don't personally feel we need love story after love story after love story with Spock. We sort of had it with Christine. We've had it with T'Pring. Are we now about to have another one with La'an? Do we need that? But I really like the two of them, their pairing. Christina Chong and Ethan Peck really bounce well off each other, and I liked them in this episode. So call that a concerned citizen or something. Anyway, some classical music starts to play, and Wake Me Up Before You Go Go by Wham. Up. It's like every wedding ever, and I love that that tradition continues into the 23rd century. That's not the end of it. There is a stinger on the end of this episode. It's where we get our second sort of window reveal, and it's Ortegas. We can see how uncomfortable she is at the party, and she leaves. She goes to the sparring gym, and she seems to be working something out on the punching bag. We get that reveal, not that we really needed a question, of she sees a Gorn in the window. And if you thought she was over her experiences with the Gorn, this is here to tell you, nope, no she ain't. And that's the end of the episode, but not the end of this video. So would you kindly join me, please, at Cetacean Observations. This episode opens with some .7s that were introduced in Star Trek Discovery. Some of the ships around Starbase 1. We got the Kelsey May, again, Starbase 1 itself, the Bellerophon class, like the Farragut. We have a ship that's very reminiscent of the Newton class that was over in the Kelvin universe as well. Centennial Day, obviously being a reference to the final episode of Enterprise. We have an Archer-type ship parked over Starbase 1 as well. I like them. They're simple, you know, very reminiscent of the Freedom class, of course, that was introduced in the Next Generation and then had its great moment in Star Trek Lower Decks. Absence of the heart would be quite fatal. Obvious reference to Spock's brain right there. Roger Corby, a returning character from the original series. The reveal that Dr. Corby is Christine's date. We get music that's very evocative of that cue. You know the cue from Amok Time. The Ortegas siblings. Beto, of course, has a large role in James Swallow's novel Towards the Night. I do recommend you check that out. Also, I just like the fact that they called the Gorn an 8-foot iguana. Why not? There's a Hiawatha class around Starbase 1. And actually, do you know what? I'm going to give that an up because I like the inclusion of ships from Star Trek Discovery. This is only a couple of years after season 2 of Discovery. You know, you have a whole fleet that you hardly just parked in dry dock and stopped using. When Christine arrives, Spock presents her with a gift, which is this book. Now, she goes to give it back to him, and he makes reference to the fact that, you know, it is not customary to return a gift, just like Spock did with Uhura in Star Trek Beyond with the necklace. Chapel's bracelet is made from Talarian star gems. Now, it's one of those ones where it could be a different pronunciation of Talarian, who are, of course, existing aliens within Star Trek, or there could be an entirely new one invented for this episode. I don't mind, really. Reese Darby's wedding planner appearing as other characters, because in the Squire of Gothos, Spock meets Trelane, and there is not a single second of recognition between the two, and they get around it by we the audience see Reese Darby, but the characters don't. It's nice and simple. I love it. He appears as a young Vulcan. He appears as an Andorian. I love it. I love it. Then, as I said earlier on, that thing, the sound of a finger click between the darkness, between things changing. Very nice reference to a Q, obviously. Something that made me really smile was another class of starship that was orbiting Starbase 1, and it's a Crossfield class. And actually, if we jump forward, there's two of them. And I like that because, yes, the Discovery is classified, But why would you retire an entire line of starships just because one of them is classified? You would of course use them again. This could be something as simple as, we had the file, why not stick it in there? But it works. Why wouldn't it work? I did have a moment, I will say, where I had to go to zoom in and go, hang on, is that the refit crossfield from the 30-second center? Well, no, I'm reasonably confident it's the one it should be from Discovery Seasons 1 and 2. But anyway, yeah, it's grown on me. It really has. I was like everybody else when that first preview came out. I went, oh, that's a choice. Anyway, I really like seeing it. Appearing as an Andorian, he really does look like Trelane though, doesn't he? Is William Campbell's character. Another one of the ships in orbit of Starbase 1 seems to be a Sombra class ship, just like the USS Peregrine from the episode All Those Who Wander. Reese Darby makes reference to Cal Ifi, which was sort of the entire point of Amok Time, really. Interesting musical decision. As Corby's breaking into Spock's quarters, the Alexander Courage notes play. Okie dokie, why not? The poem by Pablo Neruda, as I said, Chilean poet, Love Sonnet, number 11. While Corby and Spock are trying to figure out what's going on, Corby says, I checked myself for phase variances and found none, when Spock suggests this might be an alternate universe. It's subtle, but that feels like a reference to the fact that the quantum signatures are different between the mirror universe and the prime universe. Some nice deep cut Discovery stuff there. Spock makes references to the improbability field from So Space Rhapsody. At the bachelor party, Sam Kirk is holding a bottle of Saurian brandy. We see the return of Pike's green jacket again, which we should always see. Scotty saying he's not much of a drinker. Yeah, that'll change. There's also a funny thing here where, it's not really an Easter egg, but fun for us, but these people do not know Spock. Sam says, hey, we were going to do karaoke. You really don't know Spock very well. While Reese Darby is trying to get Spock to, go and rest for the big day, he says, count troubles then. I have a, well, actually moment. Technically, it could be inferred that Spock would have no idea what he's talking about, because in the original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, which takes place several years after this, Spock seemingly encounters a Tribble for the first time. A most curious creature, Captain. Its trilling seems to have a tranquilizing effect on the human nervous system, Spock says while holding a Tribble for possibly the first time. However, we don't categorically know it's the first time he's ever seen a Tribble. So, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, it doesn't break canon. Moving on. Scotty is wearing his tartan and kilt at the wedding. Now that is a tradition that was brought in by James Doohan all the way back in the original series as well. Really, really like that. I wouldn't be shocked as well if Martin Quinn played a part in choosing the pattern of that too. I know, because in a recent press junket he spoke about how he was trying his very hardest to get things from Paisley, where he's from, into the character of Scotty as played by him. He also said, like, I know James Doohan said he's from Aberdeen, so don't kill me. Corby makes a reference to if anyone acts out of line, the wedding planner will wish us all into a cornfield. We had a bit of a head scratcher. What's that a reference to? It's like, oh yeah, it's the Twilight Zone. The episode It's a Good Life, where the kid has all the powers. And if you annoy him, he'll wish you into a cornfield, which basically means he'll wish you out of existence. So, I like you, sci-fi references. I like you. The wedding cake toppers. The Spock one looks a little bit like the Flexi Figs that Master Replicas released. Now, they didn't have a Spock one in that line, but if you look at the picture of it, like the one that looks like Pike, for example, looks an awful lot in the style of the one that Spock has. So is this their kind of soft launch of a new one? Okay. There's a Bolian attending the wedding. I just want to say, once again, doggo. Spock says at one point that he will hold space for a chapel, and depending on how long you spend on the internet, you might know that holding space became very, very relevant for us internet peoples last year. They're holding space for that. Q, what are we going to do? We got John Delancey, we got Q Jr., played by Keegan Delancey in the other one. The fact that Trelane, if it indeed it is Trelane, might be a member of the Q Continuum, introduced in the novel Q Squared by the sadly departed author Peter David. He makes reference to the old homeworld, which we infer to be Vodian 9. And of course, remember, Corby's speciality is in advanced ancient cultures. There is a comic, the TOS comic Waypoint, the special issue, Consider Eternity, that has Decker after joining with V'ger, meet Q in a representation of a wheat field. Now, that might be tenuous, I'm not gonna lie. I'm aware wheat and corn are different things. Just that idea. Bit too much? That's fine. We'll move on. We have a Tellarite at the wedding, we have a Kylie at the wedding, we have the Adosian bartender. Now this is obviously a redesign for live action, but also one thing that has puzzled me is that in the animated series and in Lower Decks with the character of Taz in the episode Room for Growth, both Arix and Taz had the third arm in the front, whereas Kelsing, if that is indeed her name, has her third arm at the back. I don't know what the reason for that change is. I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it, I won't lie, but there is definitely a redesign for live action. Chapel and Corby, after everyone is returned to normal, decide that their way of dealing with all this is they're just not going to talk about it again. You know, a bit like the USS Discovery. Last but not least, we have a Rungovian who is at the wedding or centennial celebration, whatever you want to call it at this point, and himself and Mbenga shake hands and everyone has a good old time. And folks, that's everything. Thank you so much for watching along. What do you think of the season so far? We had 2 for the price of 1 this week. We are back to 1 episode a week from next week until the end of the season. Next week will be episode 3, so keep your eyes out for that one. Do check out our new reaction videos. Myself, Ellie, and Tom are covering each episode. They're little short ones, and they are, I mean, you've just watched this one, so you know the spoilers, but they are full of spoilers, okay? So just be aware of that. They will be clearly marked. Don't worry, we won't be putting out spoilers or anything like that. You are awesome, you are wonderful. Thank you so much for watching along. Thank you for all of your support. Just a quick note as well to anyone who will be attending Trek to Vegas in the upcoming weeks. I will be there, love to see you, I'd love to say hi, give us a shout. Yous are great. Folks, thanks so much, live long and prosper, and I'll see you soon.